The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth alongside Phil Duvall. Say hi, Phil.
Hello, Breakfast Nation. That's all.
That's it? That's all you got? That's all you got?
I could tell them to put the lotion on their skin or they'll get the hose again. I could say that.
We want people to keep tuning in, big guy.
Well, okay. I go back to really the most fun person to just talk, the most fun lines from any character to just say in normal voice are Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Put the lotion in the basket.
Oh, wait. Was she a great big fat person? Yes. No, you're right. You're right. It's fun. It's more fun than you think it will be.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to give it a try. Just step in.
Totally.
Step into our little.
Totally. So, welcome back to another week of Second Breakfast Podcast. Give you the rundown of what we're going to do today. We're going to tell you, Phil and I are going to tell you the things we saw over the past week. Yep. We're going to give you our one big thing from our movie-going experiences, or just thoughts about movie-dom. And then we're going to give you Project Melway. Project Melway, where we go through all of Mel Gibson's movies, brought to you by the Gibsonian Institute. We go through all of Mel Gibson's movies in chronological order, and this week we have a barn burner for you, folks.
It's game on.
Game on.
It's Passion of the Christ.
Passion of the Christ.
This is. Let's be honest.
Hang on. I thought it was Christ. I was unaware of this movie.
Have I been mispronouncing that all this time? Awkward.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I am so glad you told me that before I met him in person, because that would have been so weird.
So I'm sorry. I interrupted. Please continue.
I really think. Okay, just so everybody knows, we'll get into this later, but because we're going to talk about it later. But I'm convinced on some level that the thing that drew us into Project Melway. When we first talked about doing Project Melway, we actually talked about not doing the movies that he starred in, and we ended up deciding, or the movies that he wasn't acting in. So we weren't going to do this.
Just directed, yes.
And Apocalypto, and I think that we were. But I think what's funny is we were trying to get away from talking about Passion of the Christ, but I sort of feel like Passion of the Christ is one of the things that drew us to do this in the first place. I don't know how else to describe it. I feel like if we hadn't talked about this movie, I don't know. All I'm saying is I feel like everything I've ever done in my entire life is going to culminate in this podcast. What do you think, Andy?
I think where I'm going to take exception with, the only place I'm going to take exception with what you just said was the word us. This is, I don't know if you recall this, but I was somewhat reticent to take Project Melway on, and it wasn't because it's become a baton death march of films that stretch out into infinity, okay? That's not why. It is because of a little film titled The Passion of the Christ.
No, I agree. No, I'm with you. When I say that, it was why we did it, I don't mean that, we did it so we could watch Passion of the Christ. I mean, the fact of this movie, the fact of what Mel Gibson has become, although a lot of it, obviously much of it, has to do with what happened to him after this movie.
Right.
It's sort of, this is the beginning of the sort of Mel Gibson as polarizing figure in our culture. And I was the one who was like, we're not going to watch Passion of the Christ for Apocalypto. We'll just do his, you and I were like, and you were like, that's good. And we were like, okay, we'll do that. But I can't help but feel like the reality of this movie is what drew us into talking about him in the first place. That's what I actually mean by that. What makes it interesting, because part of us doing this was it wasn't just that we wanted to watch all Mel Gibson movies, let's be honest.
Right.
And it wasn't just, although a big part of it was just the insanity of watching one person's entire filmography in chronological order. But we both knew there was something in exciting and ridiculous about doing it for Mel Gibson. And I think Passion of the Christ is the reason for that. But I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. All I will say about that is that if that is the case, and I have no reason to think that it isn't. Although I confess I can't really recall my feelings on a particular part of Mel Gibson's life before we started this, because I feel like Project Melway has wiped everything away. I'm totally Stockholm Syndrome in.
Yep.
My response to that is, that's fair, but I still don't see why that means I had to watch Tim. You know?
I know. I do. I'm with you.
Phil, I found myself attracted to Carrie White's mom. All right? The girl who could kill me with her mind.
Sorry.
Her crazy freak of a mother. Who calls her teenage daughter's developing breasts dirty pillows, and that is the thing that stands out to me from that movie, except for the final scene where everybody dies.
Is there a man who hates religious Christians more than Stephen King? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I don't think there is.
All I know is, but it's funny you mentioned being attracted to her in that movie, Tim, but to be fair, they're remaking it with Julianne Moore, and I know you're attracted to Julianne Moore because you're a straight male.
That's fine, but the gateway Carrie's mom, I mean, it's not okay. It's not okay. Until my dying day, Phil, I will blame you. But this will all come later. This will all come later.
Blame accepted. Gladly shouldered.
Fair enough.
Gladly shouldered.
So let's start out with Phil. What did you see? What did you see this past week?
I saw so few movies this week.
Okay.
But I only saw one. No, I saw 4 or 5. Let's see here. I saw 4 movies. Not a great week. Not a great week for film watching, except to say, I will just start with the last one I watched, which was, of course, The Passion of the Christ. We've talked about that, and it's not really a movie so much as something else. I don't even know what it is, but the other 3 movies.
Oh,
it's not.
Go ahead.
Well, we'll get into that.
We'll get into it. Oh, okay.
Like if I.
No, we'll get into it.
Okay.
We'll do it.
Okay. I'm chomping at the bit. Okay. I saw 3 movies that were not Passion of the Christ this week, and the thing is, 1, I'd seen all of them before, and 2, all of them might be the best films of their respective years.
Wow.
So while I only saw 3 movies, I saw 3 amazing movies.
Nice. Hit me.
I watched Once Upon a Time in the West.
Awesome.
It is a glorious film.
Yes.
It is a. Are you ready for it? A definitive film. I might even think it might even, at least of the Sergio Leone films I've seen, it might even be my favorite.
Wow.
It is. Okay. It is wow. Although I need to watch the Man with the Name trilogy again, and I've never seen Once Upon a Time in America, so.
Sure.
But I just love Once Upon a Time in the West. I love everything about it.
Yes.
Yep. That I'd have to go look and see what movies came out in 1968. I can't imagine they were better than that, but they might be. I saw a little film. My wife had never seen this. We watched it together, called Drive.
Awesome.
Which I put to you as the best film of 2011.
Okay.
Or whichever year that movie came out. I think it's 2011.
Okay.
I think it really is. And then I watched a little movie by the name of, with a group of people who hadn't seen it before, by the name of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Awesome. I love it.
And as you know, my favorite movie from the year 2010.
Indeed.
So it was a banner week, even though it was a very small list of movies. It was just knock down, drag out. Now the thing is, I can't put this on the list. But one of the reasons that this week has been so short for movies for me was that I've been rewatching the John Adams miniseries.
Sure.
Which I've watched 3 of them, and each of them is an hour and a half long. So I'm not technically watching movies, but I'm watching like Paul Giamatti and Laura Linney and Tom Wilkinson and by the way, Danny Houston. We need to do 4 podcasts on Danny Houston. Danny Houston in all the movies.
Yes.
But I think we've it's funny. It's directed by Tom Hooper, who won the Academy Award for King's Speech. It's a movie basically, but it's not, right? So I've watched 3 of those in the past week, but it doesn't count towards my tally, so to speak.
Sure.
So anyways, that's my deal.
Can I tell you, and I didn't know this, but can I tell you why you happen to be wrong about the year 1968? It's a totally understandable.
Sure. Absolutely.
You will not believe the stuff that came out in 1968.
Is that the year?
2001.
Okay.
Funny Girl, which is one of Barbra Streisand's best ever movies.
Okay.
The Odd Couple.
Okay.
Bullet, which has some of the best car scenes ever. The Romeo and Juliet by Bertolucci.
Zeffirelli.
Yeah.
Oh, Bertolucci.
I think it's Bertolucci.
No,
Stand by.
No, it's Zeffirelli. It's the.
Yes. It's Zeffirelli.
Bertolucci did the Gibson one.
The Gibson one what?
The Mel Gibson? Oh, I'm thinking Hamlet. My bad. It is
Yeah,
Is it Bertolucci?
No, it's Zeffirelli. You were right.
It's Zeffirelli. Okay, go ahead. I've forgotten my Italian stereotypes.
Another giant musical movie, Oliver, Rosemary's Baby, Night of the Living Dead, The Lion in Winter. I mean, that's just. I mean, I can go on, but those are
what
those
won
are
the
the
Academy?
ones.
What won the Academy Award that year?
Oliver.
Okay, here's what I'll say: of the movies you listed,
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time in the West is still my favorite of any of those that I've seen.
Okay.
Unquestionably.
Okay.
I recognize that 2001 is apparently the greatest movie of all time.
No, it's
I've still only seen it once, and I think you have to apparently see it like 17 times before you fall in love with it.
Yeah, 16.
So
but once you hit the threshold, yeah.
I'm 16 short of falling in love with it, so we'll get there. We'll get there.
Have you seen The Lion in Winter?
Now, is that the one with Katharine Hepburn?
Katharine Hepburn, Peter O'Toole, Timothy Dalton, Anthony Hopkins. It's got a decent cast.
I wish I'd been friends with Katharine Hepburn. I would have called her Katie.
I would have called her Red. Anyway, so
nice. I like that. So those are my movies. Tell me about your insane list, which is probably 13 movies long.
It's not. It's longer than yours. It's 8.
Okay, that's good.
And I'm pretty proud of this. 5 of them were movies I'd never seen before.
Ooh,
more than half. I saw We're the Millers.
Okay.
Funnier than it should be.
Okay.
Put that on the poster.
There you go.
Elysium. Good. Not as good as I wanted it to be. Because I loved District 9.
Okay.
Aftershock. A low-budget horror film starring Eli Roth as an American tourist in Chile that has to find his way out after a massive earthquake. Stunningly, this is not a good film.
Did you watch that by accident?
I didn't.
Were you tied Clockwork Orange style to a chair? Like, what happened that you watched this movie?
Would it improve your opinion of me if I answered yes to that question?
Yeah, it would.
Then yes, I was tied to a chair.
Good deal.
Source Code.
Lovely little film.
Delightful yarn. A delightful yarn. I could watch Jake Gyllenhaal do pretty much anything. I know I could watch Michelle Monaghan do anything. I could watch Vera Farmiga do anything. And Jeffrey Wright is in it as a bonus. I mean, come on, people.
Jeffrey Wright is in it. Jeffrey Wright is in it as like the most archetypal villain in American military industrial complex. No. It's fine. It's just he's like, everything I say is duplicitous and evil, but I'll say it very fascinatingly and articulately.
He's functionally. See if you agree with this. He's functionally like the American version of the actual character Dr. Strangelove. He's got the weird physical ailment.
Yep.
The crazy hair. The weird way of speaking. I mean, it would be weird for him to say, Mein Führer, I can walk, but it wouldn't have been out of place.
But not that weird.
But not that weird.
It is definitely, it's, you notice Andy used very sort of quaint language to talk about it, and so did I when he told me he was watching it. It's a B movie, frankly. I don't know how else to describe it, but it is a very, very well done B movie.
Sure.
Like it's not earth-shattering, but it's really, really well done little movie. You're not gonna feel bad watching it.
Right. Agreed. I watched The Passion of the Christ. We'll talk about it later.
Oof.
I watched Cloud Atlas.
Oh boy.
I'm going to talk about that in a minute when we get to our one big thing. That's my one big thing for this week. Cloud Atlas. I liked it.
Okay.
I'll leave that there for now.
Okay.
I watched a completely forgotten but totally adorable romantic comedy, The Truth About Cats and Dogs.
Okay. The one with Uma Thurman and Ginny Garofalo?
Yes.
And who's the guy in that?
Ben Chaplin. Who dude is good looking and has a British accent. How did he not have a career? How? How did that happen?
Yeah.
It's adorable. It is better than I remember it being. It totally and completely holds up. Mostly because Janine Garofalo gives a performance that is stellar all around, not just in the romantic comedy way.
Okay.
And the last movie I watched, not chronologically, but absolutely, hands down, the best movie I watched this week, because it is one of the greatest movies of all time, 12 Angry Men.
Yep.
If you are not currently watching 12 Angry Men, you cannot comprehend how good this movie is. I myself am not currently watching it, so even as I am telling you, I cannot comprehend how good 12 Angry Men is.
Can I take what you just said seriously for a second?
Please.
I actually think that's true.
I do
and it's
too.
not just not just a because the thing is, like, we talk about movies, but talking about movies does not help you understand how great a movie is.
Yes.
Like, no amount of, like, so when Andy and I talk about how exciting it was the first time we saw Legolas, like, shoot 17 arrows in a row at somebody, and we all started clapping. Andy and I started clapping. We started clapping, what's that word? Spontaneously, as did the rest of the theater. We can describe that to you, but all we're doing is describing what was the actual appreciation of the event. But we can never, in our description of it, achieve the moment when we appreciate it that way.
Yep.
And I think when you're sitting in the midst of 12 Angry, I can tell you what 12 Angry Men is about. We can wax about poetic about why it's special, but it's really, there's just nothing compares to just sitting and watching that movie and being like, part of the beauty of it is sitting in the midst of watching 12 guys sitting in a room talking and being like, how is this remotely fascinating? Except that it's incredibly fascinating.
Except it is 100% riveting. There is not a moment of that movie where you're like here's an experiment. If you've never seen 12 Angry Men, watch it and try to do something else.
Right.
Try to do something else.
I dare you.
Also,
by the way, we both watched Henry Fonda movies this week.
That's what I was going to say. Also,
yeah.
Henry Fonda, known for playing basically the most decent guy in Hollywood history. The only one who comes close has got to be Jimmy Stewart. Plays the bad guy in your movie, and he is truly vile.
And it's one of the reasons why Sergio Leone agreed to do the movie. Actually, was because he said he was done doing westerns. I'm done doing westerns.
Fascinating.
And they said we're gonna get Henry Fonda, and they knew he had said publicly that his dream was to work with Henry Fonda.
Awesome.
So he was like, okay, got him, but I'm gonna make him the bad guy. And
awesome.
and then he enlisted Dario Argento and one other guy to co-write the script with him.
I have no idea that Dario Argento wrote it.
And it's another guy whose name you totally know that he directed it with, or that he wrote it with. I mean, it's just anyway. There's so much about that movie, Once Upon a Time in the West. But anyways, so Henry Fonda.
Awesome. Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what we experienced this past week. What did you guys watch? Let us know at secondbreakfastpodcast@gmail.com. We're always willing to.
No one ever does that.
Yes, but we want you to because we're always.
I know you're right.
Zip it.
Bernardo Bertolucci was the other person who wrote it with him.
Wow, that's a weird synergy. We want you to tell us what you wrote, what you watched this past week, because frankly, we're not above mining other people's experiences for this podcast.
No, of course.
So, is that fair? Fair statement?
That's 100% fair in every way that you speak.
All right. Shall we move on to the one big thing?
One big thing, Andy Roth.
Yes. Oh, is that you telling me to go, or?
That is exactly what that is.
Okay. Well, so I've cheated. I have two, but they're both good. I think you'll enjoy both of them. First, the smaller one big thing, although not for the young man in question. A good friend of the podcast. Phil, you have never met him, but you know him by name. Andrew Thurmond, a friend of mine from law school.
Yeah.
He makes it into this podcast because in the last week, for the first time ever, he watched The Breakfast Club.
Wow, really? The first time ever?
Yeah, he's not even sure himself how he missed it, but yeah. So,
wow.
Yes. You all right there?
That's I don't understand how someone how did that happen? I don't care how. I mean, what does he have parents? I don't understand. Does he have? Was he born? Was he like test tube created? What is it? I don't understand.
I'll tell you. He had exactly the reaction that you would want when because folks, when Phil and I do a lot of showing people movies, and let's be honest, we have very high opinions of our tastes. So here's the reaction. If we ever show you a movie that you've never seen, here's the reaction we're looking for. Oh my God, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, bar none. And if you didn't like it, that's still what we want you to say.
Fake it.
Fake it. Yes. And the thing is, I had that little glow because of this podcast and because we're friends, he wanted to share the fact that he had seen The Breakfast Club with me, and so that sort of obliterated any say what that I was like, you haven't seen it yet. I told him it was like his movie Bar Mitzvah. Now he is a man. You know, today he's a man, and that was exactly his response too. Like he was like, I loved it. He thought some things about the setup were a little goofy, but that's okay. That's not what makes the movie that movie.
Nope.
You know. Nope. So I can't really dispute that, even though I can't look at that movie and be any sort of objective about it at all. So that's my first one big thing. My second big thing, Cloud Atlas, which, okay, so here's the deal, Phil. Or no, you know the deal. Here's the deal, Sackbreakers.
America.
Some time ago, I think when it was in theaters, you saw it in theaters, correct?
Yep.
So Phil saw this movie in theaters, and he was like, I can't wait for you to see it and for us to talk about it. And I took this as something approaching an endorsement. So when I got it, I mean, obviously it was on DVD. When I got it from the library, I was like, okay, here we go. And so I either emailed you or I texted you, and I was like, about to watch Cloud Atlas, really excited. And you were like, why would you be excited to watch that movie? And I was like, oh no.
You son of a...
Oh no. What?
It's not...
Like Arrested Development, I've made a terrible mistake.
Right.
It's not a bad movie. Here is the analogy that I've come up with, and I think you're really going to like this, because this is another movie. This movie you hate, but I think you're going to like the analogy anyway. I don't hate either movie. What Cloud Atlas is to science fiction, what Love Actually is to romantic comedies. Love Actually was designed as only the good parts romantic comedy, because it had so many stories that all you could get of each story was the good part. But the problem is, with a truly well-made movie, let alone a romantic comedy, it's the quote-unquote not good parts that round things out, that make people instead of characters you're watching move around on a stage as if they're connected to wires, right?
Right.
And I hear from people, our esteemed director, Keith Picaro, has read the book and he counts it among his favorites. I have heard that the book is I mean, obviously the book's going to be better than the movie, right? But but the way it's better is that all of these people have a full three-dimensional life that you're reading about. What you're getting is the good parts version of all of these stories, because everything that happens is like, oh my God, this is happening now, and oh my God, and boom, we're cross-cut to another story, and boom, we're in another time period, and I get it. And nothing that I was seeing certainly was uninteresting to my eyes. It is a feast for the eyes.
That's a well-said statement, yes. Well said.
But even sort of intellectually and emotionally, there's nothing that was uninvolving. But because it was all the good parts, it stayed at involving rather than going all the way into moving, if that makes sense. It didn't move me, and I wanted it to desperately.
And I think they want you to want it to. I think they want it to.
Yes.
I think they want it to move you desperately.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think it's an incredibly ambitious movie.
Yes.
That I don't know. Except that I don't know what its ambition really is totally. That's, I think, part of the problem. I don't know what it says that any of their other movies haven't said. But that's okay.
Sure.
I feel like I want to, like the Wachowskis, my experience of them is that when they are working, that when they are at their grandest is when they are at their worst. I don't mean that meanly. It sounds like
I think that's right.
Like they're like The Matrix, so tightly told, bound, so tightly told, and then The Matrix, and then the second two Matrix movies, you're like, nope, because they try to make it huge.
Yes, can I actually expound on that?
Yeah.
There's an error in our last segment. I saw an extra movie, and it's pertinent to this discussion.
Okay.
I watched V for Vendetta,
which they produced,
didn't direct.
right? They didn't direct, right?
They produced, but clearly, I mean, their fingerprints are all over it. But Tom Tykwer, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Twyker, who's the other guy who directed this Cloud Atlas movie with
Yes. So that movie was much better than I remember it being, and it is because, I mean, that cast is bananas.
Yep.
Stephen Ray, Stephen Fry. Obviously.
All the Stevens. If it's a good Steven,
If it's a good Steven, right.
Kobolowski, no, but still.
John Hurt.
Natalie Portman.
To say nothing of Natalie Portman and Hugo Weaving.
I deeply appreciate the Wachowskis for basically single-handedly deciding to make Hugo Weaving a star.
Yes. Agreed.
Because his performances in Lord of the Rings are fantastic, but it wouldn't have made him a star. But it really is him as Agent Smith that takes it.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. By the way, I don't care what anyone says. Their version of Speed Racer is a blast.
Haven't seen it.
Visually, one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
I believe you.
I'll just leave it at that.
I believe you. I have no problem whatsoever believing that.
It's got John Goodman and Susan Sarandon as parents of somebody. Doesn't even matter who. They're husband and wife. Who cares after that?
Why did no one tell me this beforehand?
You're welcome.
I have a prediction for our What Did We Watch next week. I'm just going to throw that out there.
There you go. Watch it on Blu-ray. Watch it on Blu-ray. It needs it.
Well, sure. I believe that. Okay. So, these are my one big things. We can keep talking about Cloud Atlas, but I'm not sure it deserves it.
We're good. It's talked about itself long enough.
It's fair. Go ahead. Your one big thing. Hit me.
Okay, so my one big thing is very simple, and it's a little bit. Look, we were on hiatus for 3 weeks, and so there's a lot of things that we didn't get to talk about, and so this is actually a little bit late, but or depending on how you look at it, it could be a little bit early.
I love this already. I'm so excited.
I want to start the Oscar buzz now. I want to start the Oscar buzz right now.
Okay.
Buzz
away.
Are you ready for it? Okay, you ready? One big thing.
Wait. Now I'm ready. Go.
Okay. Melissa McCarthy's performance in The Heat.
Awesome. I love you so much right now.
Here's what's interesting to me. There are performances like Denzel Washington's performance in Flight, where Flight did not deserve any Academy Awards, except for if there was an Academy Award for most harrowing plane crash scene of all time. Then it wins the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Sure.
And yet Denzel Washington absolutely deserved to be nominated. And if it had not been for Abraham Lincoln's performance as Abraham Lincoln, because I'm pretty sure that's what Daniel Day-Lewis did, was literally just inhabit somebody.
He had a seance. He was imbued, and
it's like Denzel Washington picked the wrong year to have one of the greatest performances ever, because I really believe that about his performance in Flight.
Yeah.
But Flight was not a great movie, but the performance was. And quite often when you look at Oscars, you'll see performances where like you go, the movie wasn't the best ever, but this performance is something spectacular.
Yeah.
We already know that comedies don't get the love they deserve in Oscars.
Just don't.
And we know that the only place that a comic performance can generally, with very few exceptions, be nominated and awarded will be in the supporting category.
Yep.
I think that needs to change. I mean, I think it should have changed a long time ago.
Right.
But I think that Melissa McCarthy's performance in Heat is a perfect example of a lead acting performance that is absolutely, although we recognize that you shouldn't be giving awards for art. If you're going to give awards for art, which is dumb, this is a performance that is just as deserving as any other performance that's going to be out there, male or female, this year. It is absolute comic genius, her performance. And the movie is pretty good, but the thing that held me into this movie the entire time was her performance, which was managed to be something that I think was actually lacking on some level with her Academy Award nominated performance in Bridesmaid, which is that it felt utterly human. That she managed to take this character, which was completely and utterly eccentric and ridiculous, and imbue a humanity to this character that I believed from the beginning to the end in a way that doesn't make sense for the structure of the film and for the story. The story is, she's an absurd character. She has a refrigerator full of firearms.
Yeah.
But Melissa McCarthy sells it.
Sure.
And it just, I can't wait to see the movie again because I can't wait to watch her again. And I can't wait to laugh that hard at her again.
Yeah. Phil, here's where I disagree with you. Okay? absolutely
Wow.
nowhere. You are completely
Thank you.
right.
All right, I
in
was about
every
to
way.
stop listening.
You're just totally right. It is. I cannot think. The first comedy to win Best Picture was It Happened One Night, and
Yep.
it's also one of 3 movies to win the top 4: picture, actor, actress, and director.
Yep,
The other 2 being Silence of the Lambs and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
that's right.
They also all won Best Director. All won Best Screenplay, or at least the last 2 did. I don't know about It Happened One Night. But so obviously, It Happened One Night. Clark Gable, Claudette Colbert were nominated and recognized with the actual award in the leading categories.
Yeah.
Other than that, you've got Kevin Kline. Did he win Best Actor?
Supporting.
It was supporting for Fish Call Wanda?
You have Diane Keaton for Annie Hall. That's really all you have.
I can't think of anyone else.
You have Woody Allen being nominated for Best Actor for Annie Hall.
Right, yes.
But really you have Diane Keaton winning for Annie Hall, and you could argue Helen Hunt winning for Helen Hunt and Jack Nicholson winning for As Good as It Gets, which is definitely a comedy. It is. It's a comedy.
No, I agree with you. I agree
and they
with
won.
you. But this is going to sound so chintzy, but I feel like they won for the dramatic parts. Like that is not a comedy the same way Fish Called Wanda is.
And you could argue that about Annie Hall as well. I mean, the reason Annie Hall is super
true.
So I think you've got people that have done it. But what I love about The Heat is it's just a comedy.
Totally.
Like it's just a straight up comedy.
Yes.
And it's not as good of a film, quote unquote, le film. Bridesmaids is a glorious film.
It's a wonderful cinematic experience.
I really believe it. Nah.
Yes.
I'm my pinky up as I say this.
Dude, I own it. And I will own The Heat. But the reason I will own The Heat is because of Melissa McCarthy.
The reason that I don't own Bridesmaids is because I have HBO and it's on every week. It's the same reason. It's the same reason why I will. It's the same reason why I will never buy the Seinfeld box set.
Sure.
Because Seinfeld is on 4 times a day where I live.
Sure.
And I actually watch it quite often. So it's like, why would I need to?
It's better than Netflix streaming.
And the thing is, I own like all of the old Simpsons episodes. That's a whole other ball of wax. There's a lot of TV shows that I own, but then you have to decide when you're going to watch it. But when it's on TV randomly, you're like, great.
All right.
And so Bridesmaids is on TV randomly, and I'm like, oh, right, I'll watch that. But I would never say, so that's the benefit of that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Bridesmaids is a great movie. It really is, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
But The Heat's not a great movie. It's a good movie.
It's a good movie.
But Melissa McCarthy's performance needs to be discussed as one of the best performances of the year, male, female, whatever. And that's my one big thing.
I was impressed with Sandra Bullock in it as well. She is, I mean, because
it's fine. She's a lovely comic actress, and I'm not saying that lightly.
Yes. It is a testament to the job. It is a testament to the job that she does in this movie that she is not completely blown off the screen by Melissa McCarthy.
That's right, and it's a testament to. I think it's a testament to that, and to the generosity of the director and the generosity of both actors, that they hold each other, that they build off of each other. Yes. That Melissa McCarthy's, one of the other beauties of it, Melissa McCarthy's performance doesn't actually crowd out Sandra Bullock's performance.
You know, there is a sort of a tenet in acting, and I first heard of it in improv, and it's the rule of yes and that is. And I know you've heard this, Phil, but for those out there who, those out there in Second Breakfast Nation who do not have any acting in their background, losers,
winners,
indeed. The reason, how interesting of a scene is this? You know, you go in and you try to establish something like, man, it sure is cold out here, and the other person in the scene goes, no, it's not, it's warm, right? You're done, right there, right? But if that person says yes, and we're on a snowy mountain pass and our car just broke down, then you've got a scene. That is yes and. And on some level, if everyone involved isn't doing yes and, then it won't work. And The Heat, every bit of it that succeeds because of yes and. The two main actresses are like, row in the same direction. Let's do it.
Good call. I think that's a great call. I really think it's a great call. Good call. I love it. Well said.
Thank you. I'm glad that you think that was impressive, because I'm going to take 5 seconds to show everyone that I'm an idiot. I have forgotten yet another movie I saw last week, and It's the second best movie that I saw last week because nothing is touching 12 Angry Men unless I've had
Okay.
just a superlative week.
Okay.
Movie called The Hunt. It is a Danish film starring Mads Mikkelsen, who you know as the bad guy in Casino Royale or TV's Hannibal Lecter.
You lost everyone when you said Danish, but go ahead.
I understand. It's a cheese Danish. No, it's not. So it's not. Sorry.
You had me and lost me again. I was like in. You said cheese. Then I was out again.
It's about a kindergarten teacher played by Mads Mikkelsen who is falsely accused of sexually abusing one of his kindergarten students.
Oh, so it's another light comedy.
I'm telling you. Well, let me put it this way. It is easily one of the best movies I've seen this year. It is. A friend of mine asked me about it in an email, and my response was, it is a movie for those who thought The Deer Hunter and Requiem for a Dream were too lighthearted. It is so depressing in the way that, like, wow, we are doomed as a species. Having said that, so I cannot say that I, quote-unquote, enjoyed the experience.
Uh-huh.
But it is but honestly, Matthew McConaughey in Mud, you've got a serious challenger for Best Actor.
All right.
Mads Mikkelsen is phenomenal.
Hey.
What's that?
Speaking of not enjoying the experience, Project Melway.
Project Melway.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. The Jew and the priest are about to talk about Passion of the Christ. Should I put my collar on for this discussion? Should I do that?
Everything is ruined, Phil, because the Jew and the priest are about to discuss Passion of the Christ is not the setup for a joke.
No, it's not. It's like we should walk into a bar and have this conversation.
Exactly. That is precisely right.
Amazing. Mostly because I want to drink after watching that.
Yes.
I think we need to talk about the most obvious glaring aspect of this film right out of the gates, which is Jim Caviezel's contact lenses. What is going on? He's got these amber colored eyes. It really bothered me.
Yeah.
Now here's the deal. I get that in real life I almost called him Jesus, that Jesus Caviezel, Jim Jesus Caviezel. I get that in real life Jim Caviezel has these like sparkly blue eyes, and unlike many previous directors, Gibson has clearly gone for authenticity here and wanted to make sure he looked like a Middle Eastern dude and did not let him have blue eyes.
Yes.
So he gave him contact lenses. Fine, that's fine. And I've seen fake contact lenses. Fine.
Yep.
But he made a point of making them sort of like, they weren't like dark brown, they were like glowy amber brown.
Yes, they were like
and it was
look into my eyes and you'll see the face of God brown.
It's very uncomfortable. It's very And I don't mean uncomfortable like, oh, you're making me think of the divinity, like at all. It's just like, those aren't his real eyes. Like it was really the whole time, like, what's going on with your eyes, Jim Caviezel?
Yes.
And I think it's problematic partially because Jim Caviezel's eyes are one of the keys to his I consider him I like him as an actor a lot. I loved him in The Thin Red Line.
Sure.
And I'll tell you a story when we're off the air about The Thin Red Line that no one would believe if I told you on the air. So I'll just tell you later.
Fantastic.
But I think Jim and I quite enjoy his stoicism, his stoic minimalist performance on Person of Interest. But I sound like I'm being sarcastic, but I actually do love it.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. There are people who would say the exact same thing and not mean it as a compliment.
I know, but I actually do. He makes Kevin Costner. He makes Kevin Costner seem like an overactor in this show.
Nice.
But anyways,
whatever, dude. Silverado.
That's it's all you got. Okay.
It's true.
So Passion of the Christ.
Can I say something?
Please. I don't even know where to start.
Okay, well, here's where I'm going to start. It's with something that you said earlier in this podcast. All right, it's got to have a ramp up. I feel like everything we say is going to be in couched language. So the thing is, all right.
You gotta like look around your eye, turn your around your shoulder before you say anything.
I'm in my apartment and I know I'm alone, and yet somehow I will be overheard by someone who's going to be like, "I take offense at that."
Right.
Here's my issue. Okay, last week we watched a movie, The Singing Detective, which was an enjoyable experience, But one of the things that we both agreed with, and you brought up, was it Roger Ebert? Somebody said, who is this movie for?
Yep.
Okay? I don't think that's the issue with this movie. Okay?
Right.
Because it's pretty clear who it's for. And,
Yep.
and here's something else that is not my issue. It's not my issue that this movie was clearly not made for me. That's fine. That is fine. It definitively wasn't. I don't care. That doesn't prevent me from interacting with a movie in any way.
Right.
It's that it doesn't feel like a movie. It doesn't feel like a movie. I don't need a 3-act structure, rising action, climax, falling action.
Right.
I don't need that. But I thought for a really long time how to describe what I needed out of a movie, and this is an oversimplification, and it's not quite right anyways, but this is as close as I can get. Nobody learns anything in this movie. As in, the characters don't learn anything. No one is you don't see any characters be converted in this movie. Mm-hmm. And the audience doesn't learn anything. There are two ways that a movie can affect you. You can learn something, or you can watch the characters learn something. And neither of those things happen in this movie, except I learned at least something about my limits for tolerating torture, watching torture. It leaves it feeling incomplete somehow, and I'm not saying that it is. I'm not saying it is incomplete. I'm not saying Mel Gibson forgot to include a reel.
3 acts. Yeah, or then he forgot to include 3 acts. Right.
Or even that he should have included a reel or an extra act. I'm not saying that.
I hear you.
It is clearly what it was supposed to be.
Okay.
But as someone who must interact with it, everyone must interact with it as themselves. And I am not coming from it from a Christian perspective, and I am not coming to it. From a religious perspective, regardless of that faith. There was no way in for me. There was nothing here for me. It was like and so because of that, all of the horrific violence, Roger Ebert called it the single most violent movie he'd ever seen, and I'm not sure I can disagree with that assessment. It was horrifying to watch, and at the same time, kind of like a rice cake. Because there was nothing there. And
because when it was over, you weren't like, well, that was horrifying, and now I know this thing.
Yes, exactly. I think it's telling that, I don't remember if you said this back to me, but at some point in the previous week, maybe last week when we were, foreshadowing that we would be talking about it today, we said, it's a 3-hour movie. It's not. It's 2 hours.
No, it's 2 hours and 5 minutes. It's 2 hours and 5 minutes. It's totally a 3-hour movie.
Exactly. Yes.
I have. This is the third time I've seen the movie.
Okay.
I saw it in the theater.
Okay.
I saw it in I don't even. Here's the thing. So we'll get into my feeling of it in a minute, but I don't even know where to start with you. I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you. I have almost the exact opposite impression, but it's only because I am a devout Christian.
Sure.
And it's only because I'm me. Because I have friends that are devout Christians that freaking hate this movie.
Sure.
And I have friends that are devout Christians that will never see it.
Okay.
And I have friends that are devout Christians that love it. And I don't know how you could love it. I
It's
really don't. If you call this your favorite movie, first of all, you need a hug.
Yes, it's true. It's right.
The only
And like
person
a-
whose
and like a
favorite movie
binky.
this the only person whose favorite movie this was like Mel Gibson's personal agent, because he just must have made a bundle on this movie.
Oh my goodness. Indeed. God, that's true.
There's so many things about this movie that I take personally. That it is, we were talking about The Breakfast Club and how we're completely unable to be objective about it, which of course you and I, if I'm being honest, I don't think you can be objective about any movies, but
Right.
I know what you mean. But in the sense of you being like, there are things about this movie that I can objectively recognize I like or don't like, or I can say,
Yes.
I don't think this works as well. And what you just said, for instance, there is no 3-act structure in this movie. There are no character arcs in this movie by and large.
Right.
There are little miniature ones, but by and large, there's not a character arc.
Right. It stumbles into a character arc every 20 minutes or so.
It is based completely and utterly on the idea that someone like me knows the story already, and someone is giving us a visual representation of something that we have grown up knowing.
Yep.
But I am one of those people who has had that. And just to give you some context, I think one of the reasons I have had a hard time talking, I have hesitated to do this movie with you, is not actually the whole anti-Semitic thing, although I think we should talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
But it's actually because I hesitate to talk about this movie publicly at all.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I've had very personal experiences with it that I almost don't want to share with people. I consider this movie, and if someone wants to disagree with me, fine. Here's my stance. And I agree with, and Ebert brings this up, Mr. Ebert brings this up, and I agree with him. I consider this movie, first and foremost, a singular act of devotion to faith, to Jesus Christ, from Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
That we actually saw a filmmaker / actor, film personality, someone whose art, the place that he goes to express himself is cinema.
Yes.
Use that expression for the sake of trying to show as many people his faith as possible.
Yes.
I think this movie is such a personal statement from someone, and a person who put basically his own money out there and gambled, and there was no reason to think this movie was going to be successful financially, and who had to be convinced to bring subtitles into this movie, whose desire was completely and utterly to show something of his understanding of his faith. That I am, first of all, just from an artistic standpoint, I am blown away by that, by the bare fact of it.
Yes. It is a titanic endeavor.
But right, because and I'm glad you used the term Titanic, because James Cameron did the same thing, except he did it for the sake of making something he believed utterly would be crowd pleasing. Right? I mean seriously, like, he made Titanic, he made Avatar, he made Terminator 2. In his mind, I will make the thing that will make people excited and jump out of their seats.
Yes.
And that was not Mel Gibson's goal, and that's amazing to me.
Yes.
The courage of that filmmaking. The other thing I will say is, as a Christian, someone who would do that, put themselves out there, I'm amazed by it. I'm amazed by the fact that he did that. And as someone who is raised with the story of Jesus, I mean, the thing is, how do I gauge Caviezel's performance? How do I gauge the portrayal of Jesus? I can't. I mean, first of all, I can't. So just I can't. But the reason I can't is because Gibson is trying to portray basically what he and I agree upon as the most important 12 hours in the history of the entire world. No, what?
Sure.
And so it's built into it is it built into it for me as a level of I approach it as an act of devotion, and I judge it there more than as a film. And you and I are going to talk about it more as a film. But I think what is hard for me as I go into it, flaws and all. I mean, it's not a matter of if it's perfect or not. That's not even the point. Or if it's got this, shouldn't have done this or should have done that. It's almost like I'm literally watching this person visually portray what he considers to be, and what I consider to be, the most important moment in the history of the world. That's amazing to me. And I'm also the first time I saw it was on Ash Wednesday, which is the beginning of Lent for Christians.
Yeah.
And I went straight from an Ash Wednesday service where I had ashes on my forehead to the movie theater by myself, and walked around, and over half the movie theater were people with ashes on their forehead.
Sure.
That's not going to the movies. I don't know. It's not going to church either. Right. I don't know what it is. I don't know you don't eat popcorn and drink a soda pop while watching this movie, right? Like, who's eating like Milk Duds while watching the scourging? Excellent
point. Can I talk about that real quick?
Please.
I saw it opening night.
Wow.
What? Look, we've talked about movies as church. We've talked about movies as, like, movie theaters as churches. We've talked about we've talked about, throughout this podcast, we have talked about the ways movies, both in general and specifically, fit into sort of the national and international and worldwide consciousness and all of that stuff. This was the movie that was lead pipe certain to be on everyone's lips for the following several weeks. There is no way I wasn't seeing this movie.
Interesting.
And there is no way I wouldn't want to go with it's the same thing that leads me to go to midnight movies for certain movies, because if it's just a big action movie, then it's going to be a bunch of yahoos. But if it's like a
Hobbit movie,
if it's a Lord of the Rings movie, if it's like something like that,
you want to go where the guy's wearing like the trench coat and the Thor hat.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And so that is the movie experience purely as a movie that I wanted with this. And I wanted to see if it was anti-Semitic. I wanted to see if it was a well-made movie. I wanted to see how other people reacted to it. There was not an empty seat. It was in New York. It was in one of the biggest theaters.
Yeah.
Biggest, and I mean by that, like, one of the biggest rooms in one of the biggest theaters in Manhattan.
Did you go to that place where we saw Return of the King in Midtown? Was it like that?
Yep.
Okay. Oh yeah, that screen is huge.
Yes.
Okay.
Functionally in IMAX, but you're already paying IMAX prices
Right.
in Manhattan anyway. So what it was like was very similar to what it was like for me yesterday or the day before.
I guess what was it like in terms of the room, like being in that environment?
I know, and I'm not being glib when I say there wasn't any difference. There was so much not a way in for me, and also it's more than that. You know, it was not, the crowd I saw it with was not a demonstrative crowd. So I might as well have been alone. And I'm not saying that in a
No, I know what you
disappointing
mean.
way.
I know what you mean.
No, but right. So just to be absolutely clear, I mean that was a useful and interesting experience as well.
Yeah.
What is it like?
Yeah.
I mean, you could say like
To see a movie where no one laughs, no one's crying, no one's screaming, maybe a couple gasps, maybe not.
Right.
Just utter silence.
Right. 1,000 people. I would not be surprised if this theater held 1,000 people, and for the entirety, you could hear a pin drop and anything happening on the screen, and that's it. It was fascinating. Which is another,
and that was what it was like for me, and everybody walked out that way too.
Yes. No conversation, not even between me and my friends, and none of us.
Which I consider to be an accomplishment. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do too.
It's
he accomplished something. I still don't know what it was, and I don't say that.
Well, let me give you a couple of ideas of what he made you watch. It's arresting. That's something.
True. That's true.
Let me give you a couple of ideas of what he gave to me.
Please.
For the most part, with few exceptions, that's a visual representation of what the narrative tells us happened to Jesus, the person.
Okay. Sure.
I have a visual for that now.
Right.
And I know that sounds like minor. That's not minor for me.
No, of course not. Of course not. Doesn't sound minor to me.
That's fascinating. Like this is what we see brutally happen. Even if it wasn't all of that, if it was some of that or most of that, it puts, and pardon the pun, it puts flesh and blood on the story for us.
Yeah.
And as Ebert points out, it does it in a way that like quite often before has been hidden for the sake of like making, like he wrote about how in one previous edition of one, I forget which one it was because I haven't seen a lot of the Jesus movies to be honest. They sanitize it.
Right. He had his
They shaved his armpits because Jesus was too hairy for people.
Right.
And Mel Gibson wasn't going to have any of that, you know? And so to see the ugliness on display was important to me. I think the thing that struck me the most the first time I saw it, and it struck me today as well, but differently, or this time I watched it and differently, but struck me, was the humanization of Mary, his mother.
Yes.
And the humanization of that relationship.
Yes.
Because for many, well, I grew up Lutheran, and we don't really talk about Mary that much, other than to say that she was a virgin who had a baby, and that's the deal.
Yeah.
Roman Catholics have a more involved relationship with Mary theologically. That being said, quite often it's not necessarily and he's Roman Catholic, we know Gibson is, but what we see here is a fleshing out of what that means. Mm-hmm. It says in the Bible that she witnessed his death. Yes. But to actually see her standing and watching these things.
Yes.
And then to connect, that's his mom.
Yep.
That's mom. That's mom.
Yep.
I had never, before the first time I saw this, really made that connection because it just wasn't made for me. And then seeing it visually, there it is.
Yes.
Now as a father,
yeah,
the idea of seeing your child is it's not even. It is utterly. I'd never thought about it before. Again, it re-enveloped me as like the intensity of that. And that scene where she sees him fall down, and it's not in scriptures, but where she sees him fall down and runs up to him, and she's like, "I'm here." Like it's and the look in his face at first, I was just like, I can't even. I mean, that was like some of the most powerful stuff for me was the seeing your child.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, Jesus is so much about this thing that. This thing. I mean, more than a being, it's almost like this concept that I worship, or this idea. And I don't want it to be that. I want it to be flesh and blood, but it's hard when you talk about it day in and day out for it to be flesh and blood. It's so easy to conceptualize. So a movie that puts the sort of face to that is very helpful for me.
Sure. Can I speak to that real quick?
Jump in.
The one scene in the entire movie that truly moved me emotionally.
Yeah.
Was the scene where he is building the table and she comes out and talks to him. Oh my God.
Oh, I hated that scene when I first saw it. Tell me.
I did too. I didn't like it. I was like, oh my God.
Because it's not in, first of all, that ain't in the Bible, and I'm like one of those people. I'm one of those people who's like, well, that's not in the Bible. So I wonder why they put that in there.
Right.
That was so annoying.
That scene, I freely admit, that scene is this movie's version of the secretly hot girl taking off like the pink covered overalls and letting her hair down and taking off her her
oh my God, she's gorgeous, right?
Oh my God, she's good. What? She's pretty? That is that scene. It's like really laying it on a little thick, aren't you? But because okay, well, let me back up and say this: the two performances in this movie, as objective as I can be, the two performances in this movie that I could actually consider good, if you can consider anything in this movie a quote-unquote good performance, if you can consider it a quote-unquote movie, are Jim Caviezel, Jim Christ Caviezel, and whoever the woman is, the actress who plays Mary.
Maya Morgenstern.
She
is her name.
They are wonderful in that scene, and they elevate it. Because also, and everything in that scene, I will go so far as to say this, is perfect. Because you see him. Because something that you said to me years ago, the most interesting thing about Jesus for you, at least at the time, maybe still, is that he isn't like half man and half God. He is fully God and fully man. And the thing that we never see is man. And not only do we see him like building a table because he was a carpenter, we also see him like showing his mom. He's got a mind for business because he's like a tall table, tall chairs, and she's like, why would they buy tall chairs? He's like, because I haven't made them yet, but they're gonna, and it's like perfect. And then it ends with him playfully splashing his mom in the face with water. It's like this is the Jesus. This is the most blasphemous thing I might ever say in my life. This is the Jesus who would say like, I like the idea of a whoopee cushion. You know what I mean? It is important, again, if you are not coming at this from a place of devotion, the only thing you can respond to is, I am watching a fellow human being be tortured. Right. And I can't think of another depiction of Jesus where you would ever say that, because you're not watching a dude. You're watching a cipher. You're watching a concept.
You're right. And Mel Gibson has the courage to show Jesus joking around and laughing.
Yes.
Which Christians never do.
Yes.
Like
I mean,
Jesus
have
is
to take your word
always
for that as
so
someone, but-
somber.
Right.
It's like every time Jesus, and I mean the best example of this, and I mean best in the sense that I actually think it's a really well done movie though, is Last Temptation of Christ, where
Yes.
Martin Scorsese taps so deeply into the conflict of Jesus, the inner conflict of who Jesus is. But and this is fine. It's a wonderful. That's a whole other movie I would love to talk about with you sometime. But it's exhausting.
Yes.
It's exhausting.
Yes.
And it's like on some level, if Jesus doesn't ever smile or laugh, I'd be what a downer that guy must be. And I feel like the reason so many Christians are so like depressing is because they follow a guy who just never makes a joke. Or like ever would dare splash water on his mom's face.
Right. Aren't you supposed to be telling me how wonderful the world is and how wonderful the world to come is? Why are you never smiling?
I mean, Jesus is a guy who gives all his friends nicknames. Just for the record.
Right.
Like the guy, remember the friend of yours who's like, oh, like your name's Andy? I'm calling you Ange from now on. You're like, what? That's what I do now. Like Jesus meets Simon and he's like, Simon, now I'm gonna call you Rock.
Right.
And then he just calls him Rock for the rest of his life.
Nice.
Like Peter means rock. That's what it means. Like that was just what he did. He's like, nah, you're Rock now. And like and then like James and John are like brothers, and he's like, I'm calling y'all the Sons of Thunder. What? He calls them the Sons of Thunder. That's hilarious. What is that? And no one
it's a forgotten gang from the Warriors, is what
exactly.
it is. That's awesome.
Thunder.
Very briefly about Last Temptation of Christ. You're absolutely right. I mean, that is clearly, it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's phenomenally well made. But if I have a criticism of it, it's that Willem Dafoe, while brilliant, is not given just a whole lot to do other than be dour.
Right. It's tough. And because I think that's where Scorsese is with it, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so a couple of things I know we need to hit on. One of the things I want to talk about is just how violent this movie is and how dark it is.
Yeah.
One, look, it's called The Passion of the Christ. It is the history of passion plays that depict the passion. This period of time in Jesus' life is it's over 1,000 years old. It's been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, and that's dark by nature. It delves into it doesn't shy away from the darkness. For me, the darkness and the ugliness of just how dark and ugly people can be.
Yes.
I mean, the men who are scourging Jesus, and then the two guys specifically, and they almost lose themselves and get caught up in the beating. Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't almost, they do. Like, they just forget. There's this sort of, like, monstrousness to it, and a monstrosity of humanity that I think is on display. But here's the thing that I really want to tap into. I think if this really is a deep reflection of Mel Gibson as a person, something that you and I have known for a while or have postulated for a while, I think comes to full fruit in this movie, which is Mel Gibson is a dark, dark dude. Yeah. Mel Gibson has a darkness to him. And I'm not saying that as a criticism or a compliment. It's just a reality.
Yep.
And this movie, and you'll see that, and we're going to see that next week in Project Melway. We're going to see that in Apocalypto as well, and the movie after that, Edge of Darkness. I think this is really us seeing a side of Mel Gibson that I think he's just got darkness in him. And I actually, again, it's amazing to me that we see that darkness on full display in this movie. I mean, if this movie is a personal statement, which I believe it is, and there were many ways to portray Jesus, he chose to emphasize the darkness of humanity and the deep darkness. I don't know what else. I'm trying to think of what else. The profoundly painful and disgusting potential that humanity has.
Yeah,
that's what he chose to show.
Yes, it's true. It's true. And actually, the one time that I was really moved, one of the times it wasn't just one. One of the times I was moved the most was because it's one of the things that's the most important to me about Jesus. Is the moment that he's being crucified, literally, which is when they're nailing the nails into him. Mm-hmm. And the words that he spits out as they're screaming at him and nailing at him, the words that come out of his mouth are, forgive them, forgive them. They know not
like,
what to do.
That's right. Jesus, man. Like, to me, and it worked. For me, it worked. That moment because it's exhausting, and because so many of the things that Jesus says, if you don't know who Jesus is and you're not a Christian, are pretty freaking cryptic. Like,
right.
If I imagine for you as someone who's not a Christian and you're watching and he's like, I am the Son of God, I am the Son of God, and you will see the Son of Man coming in clouds of glory with the angels. You're like,
okay.
What now? He said, wait, what's happening? What's happening? Or when he says, or when he's just like, if I really were the king of the Jews, if I really were the king of the Jews, or if I really were whatever, if my kingdom was of this world, my people would never have handed me over to you.
Right, yeah.
I imagine again, you or a lot of people being like, he's doing what now? What does that mean?
Right.
Not because you're dumb, just because if you're not initiated into that language, you'd be like, what is he saying? Like, is Jesus the Riddler in this movie? Like, what is going on here? Like, riddle me this, Pontius Pilate. But when he says this line, forgive them.
Yeah,
I think it's just he's being killed and he tells God to forgive the people that are killing him. Yeah. That to me is the essence of Jesus, and I loved seeing that on display. But that's in the midst of this cruel, cruel darkness, and I think that's the thing that I noticed about Mel Gibson is, I think people think, and we can get into anti-Semitism in a moment, but people think that he thinks something bad about the Jews. He might, but I think he thinks it about everybody. I think he really thinks dark things when he allows himself.
The
W.C. Fields quote, right?
Or R. Lee Ermey's quote as the drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket, where he's like, I hate, and just lists off extraordinarily offensive terms for every religion and
race.
Ethnic group. Right, equally.
Right.
You're all piles of boop to me.
Right.
Yes.
That may be Mel Gibson's inner psyche.
That makes me, this sounds patronizing. I don't mean it patronizing. That makes me sad for him. But sure. I'm not prepared to disagree with you.
Sure.
Can we talk, and then we could talk about the anti-Semitism or angle if you want. But can we talk about some purely movie-related stuff?
Please. Wait. I'm sorry. Real quick.
Yeah.
I just want to say one last thing.
Please.
No. But before, because I do want to talk about movie-related stuff.
Yeah.
But because I think that is movie-related. We're seeing the director, his darkness on display.
Totally agree.
Right. But what I find interesting is it is all of humanity on this mass spectrum. But what I love is throughout the movies, however sprinkled throughout the movie, you see people's deepest humanity on display as well. You see the guy who who's compelled to carry the cross for him. You see his fear in doing so, and then he's like, I'm not touching that cross. And then he tells everybody, look, just because because it shows the cross is this thing of shame. Just because I'm holding this doesn't mean that this is. You guys got to remember, I'm innocent. And the irony, of course, for Christians of hearing someone say he's condemned, I'm the innocent one.
Right. No, of course.
Right.
Of course.
But by the end of that scene, when it's time for him to go, he doesn't want to leave Jesus.
Yeah.
And the way that he looks at him, and of course the woman bringing him the glass of water and the Shroud of Turin thing, whatevs. But there's all these moments of people, Pontius Pilate's wife bringing Mary and Mary Magdalene the cloth to wipe up her son's blood. There's moments of humanity sprinkled throughout that make sure we know that even though this is dark and maddening and crazy, there absolutely are people within this who are human, who have a spark of humanity, a spark of God's grace in them. And that's important to me, I think. And I think it's important to Mel Gibson, but it's not the overwhelming feature of the film.
Yes.
The overwhelming feature of the film is the darkness and the pain and the violence and the gore.
Totally agree.
Okay, so film. Talk to me about film stuff.
So this is the sum total of the people I thought were good in this movie. I've already said the first two, Jim Caviezel and...
Did you think anyone was particularly bad in the movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought the guy who played Judas was terrible.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Ugh. But I'll get to that in a second, because I don't think it was entirely his fault.
Sure.
It's never entirely anyone's fault, right? Because it's a collaborative medium. But the actress who played Satan was quite good. She was given almost nothing to do, but she was terrifying doing that almost nothing.
And just a really interesting portrayal of evil too. Yes. I really thought.
I thought Pilate was okay. Fine. No, please continue about the actress who played Satan. Just
seductive.
Yes.
Gorgeous, but in a very off-putting way.
Yes.
What's that word I'm looking for? Androgynous. really masculine and feminine at the same time, which I think is a really cool quality. If you had found out at the end of that movie that it was played by a man, you wouldn't have been totally shocked.
Right. Yes. True.
So anyway, go ahead. So continue.
Which, not for nothing, I think is important because the Catholic Church doesn't necessarily have the greatest history with calling women evil or not.
Right.
I mean,
no.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
We're on the same page here.
Right. Monica Bellucci was fine. I feel like she was given literally nothing to do. I was so excited when she started to mop up the blood because she was doing something other than being stationary and crying.
Yeah.
This is a gorgeous, put that aside, extraordinarily talented actress, and you've got her doing nothing but leaning gently into Mary and sobbing. Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
But
much of this movie is about the visual that they literally were just like, let's get the most beautiful person possible. And just to be clear, I want to make sure we're clear on national television or whatever we do. Monica Bellucci is definitely the most beautiful person of my lifetime, possibly the most beautiful woman in the history of the world. I'm just throwing that out there. So they were like, and this movie is, I mean, he talked a lot with the cinematographer, Caleb Deschanel, about really painting, like they used old pictures and they were trying to make old-fashioned passion portraits over and over again. And so to have someone as picturesque as her in the film makes sense. But from an acting standpoint, you're right. She doesn't have a lot to do.
She does, right.
Right.
Another person I thought was bad, you will have to help me with which disciple this is. The dude that looks like a poor man's Brett McKenzie from Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah. He's supposed to be John, right.
Who did nothing but stand there and silently weep. He had 4 lines in the entire movie, and he was and all I saw.
So again, was he bad or was it bad?
Yes. I mean, I don't know. At some point, you have to take responsibility for what you're able to do.
Take responsibility for your actions, John.
That's right. So, leaving acting aside, one last thing. Folks, if you have not seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty trailer, see it. It's an extremely moving trailer. The movie could be terrible, but that's it.
I can't wait to see how this relates.
In the trailer, I think you're gonna like this. In the trailer, and I think this is on purpose because it's clearly a very impressionistic trailer and potentially a very symbolic impressionistic movie. Adam Scott, who is known on Parks and Rec, he was on Party Down. He's a great comic actor. He is clearly like the leader of the bad bullies who hate Ben Stiller. And that is represented by one of the silliest looking beards I have ever seen in my entire life.
Ever.
And when King Herod came on the screen, I was like, why does he have Adam Scott's beard from The Secret Life of Walter Mitty? Why is that a thing that is happening?
Mel Gibson makes King Herod look like such a ridiculous person.
Yes.
It is amazing.
Yes.
Just ridiculous.
He makes him look as ridiculous as he is in Jesus Christ Superstar the musical, and that is pretty freaking ridiculous.
I've never seen it, but I believe you.
Sure.
That's fascinating to me. You're right. I have a phone making noise somewhere. I apologize in advance.
It is not quite the same beard because I was totally taken out of the movie, so I was like looking really close. And I was like, oh, okay, that's not the same beard. But it was close enough that I was like, what is going on?
Right.
So let's get into three things that totally took me out of the movie that are nothing but the director. Okay. The first, and I want to say this and quickly move past it. There is a moment in The Scourging where you can see like the makeup and what basically, and I was like, and perhaps if I had been involved on more than I am watching a cipher get beaten.
Right.
Because at that moment he is not necessarily human.
Right.
He's the dude you need to see get beaten. Like it was during one of the parts where the scourge sticks into his flesh and then they have to pull it away, and you're like,
it's just one of those things where you're like, okay.
Right. But at the same time, one of those times, it happens a couple times. One of those times, I saw like the foam padding, whatever it is, and I was like, oh, all right. But I want to move past that because that's not really the director either. I mean, he could have chosen maybe a better take, but whatever. He uses techniques. I'm going to go ahead and say it. He uses them wrong. For example, slow motion. First off, he uses it way too much in this movie.
Way.
I get like using slow motion when he is getting whipped.
The movie could have been maybe 1 hour and 45 minutes if it had been in normal speed.
So one of the seminal moments of this 12-hour period, I would venture to say, and I say this without a lot of training in this area, the moment where Judas kisses Jesus. I feel like that's a fairly important moment. It goes slow-mo as he's leaning in, and then it cuts to normal speed kissing and coming back. And it is so jarring that I paused the movie. And I get that not everyone's going to have that same reaction or the reaction.
No, I hear what you mean. I hear what you mean.
But I was like, what? Like, at that moment, just let it play out, dude. Either all in normal speed or all in slow-mo. It would have been... Make
a decision, though. Make a decision.
It would have been... And even if it had been at a different... No. I was going to say, even if he had switched at a different point, but it's a kiss. It's a kiss, and then he comes back. There is no other point. It is... It totally takes away... It's almost as if he didn't trust the moment on its own, which is weird, because he spends the rest of the movie trusting moments on their own. Again,
I know. I think that was rushed past in a very strange way. I think you're right.
This is a dude who didn't want to have subtitles in this movie. Like, he clearly has a lot of, to use the word, faith in the people who are watching this, right? And it totally took me out of the movie.
Yep.
Again, another scene with Judas. Right before his suicide, he is being pursued and harangued by these kids who are also intermittently turned into demons and it's stuff.
Yeah, I know.
And I should not have been laughing at the beginning of that scene, but it's like lights up on Judas, and he is surrounded like by these what would you say, like 8-year-olds maybe? Give or take?
8 to 10. Yeah, about
8 to 10. And then it pulls back, and he's on like a ridge, and it is as if he is not within 50 miles of any city. It's like, how long were these kids chasing him?
Right.
To say nothing of the fact that he's like speed walking. Dude, you can outrun 8 to 10-year-olds.
Like, I think I hear you. I think that he is... Gibson worked really hard to create something that's not really shown in the scriptures, in the narrative, in any of the 4 Gospels, of just what happens to Judas in between his decision and the actual his decision to kill himself.
Yes.
I think I don't like the way he did it. I don't like it at all. If the soundtrack had been different, it could have been from a comedy.
Indeed. And I mean, not for nothing, again, as a non-religious person, you know what I want to see? I want to see the downfall of the single greatest villain in human history, right?
Interesting.
As long as you're not going with like the Last Temptation of Christ version, where like he's an integral part and blah 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 and all that stuff.
Well,
if you're not going with that, sorry, go ahead.
So no, you're right. You're from a cinematic standpoint, you're correct.
Right.
From a theological standpoint, I think one of the problems is that in the history of the church, we have spent so much time demonizing Judas, we actually haven't spent a lot of time thinking about his motives or who he was.
Sure.
And it's just pure demonization of him. And I find that really interesting. I don't buy into that personally, and I don't buy into that demonization of Judas. And I applaud Last Temptation of Christ, even if I disagree with it. I applaud it from the perspective that it takes seriously the idea of Judas's discipleship of Jesus, and the fact that he was a human being who loved Jesus, who followed Jesus, and was trying to figure something out, and so was trying to be obedient to Jesus even in his disobedience.
Right.
That's something. This movie takes the very standard idea that Judas was did the wrong thing, and then was overcome by this decision and killed himself.
Right.
And so it has to figure out a way to get from here to here, and that's fine. I just not a huge fan of the way it's done.
I wish it hadn't been a lame journey from here to here. To be
blunt,
I
understand.
You know.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
The last thing I want to say about the movie as a movie, but this is a question, and I'm honestly not sure what the answer is.
Okay.
Is Mel Gibson a good director of actors? Because I'm not, and I will wait. I have not seen, as you know, I have not seen Apocalypto. I'm leaning towards no. The good performances in Braveheart are all by people we have seen be brilliant elsewhere.
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure Apocalypto will answer that question for you at all.
Fair.
Which is really interesting that you bring this up. I think he's a good actor. I think he's a good director of mood, and
fine. Yes.
And a good stager of sequences.
Yes.
And that sounds like a veiled criticism. It's not. I mean, I think those are things that he is. There are moments where the chaos of a lot of the scenes, he's able to manage the chaos, that he creates a feeling of chaos and then manages to navigate through that chaos.
Right. You're never. It's not like like one of the Bourne action sequences where you're not sure what's going on. Like you are.
Right.
The important thing when creating chaos as a director is creating a sense of geography.
Right.
And he does I will go so far as to say he does a marvelous job of that. Really good. We saw it in this, we saw it in Braveheart.
But I think you may be right about that. So what made you think of that? Just because of the bad performances?
Because it's not that they're bad. It's that there is nothing interesting about them. And I thought back to Braveheart, and I was like, well, Brendan Gleeson's really good.
I think there's a lot of things. I think there's and I think that may also just be the choice of the way he chooses to portray movies or the story he chooses to tell. I mean, he could have done a lot more with The Disciples had he chosen to.
Right. Right. Also, I mean, I forget who we were talking about, but his very first directorial offering, Man Without a Face.
Man Without a Face.
I remember us talking about, like, man, that actor wasn't very good in this. But it was someone who is not always bad. It was just like...
Sure. I just think I think there's characters that are cardboard cutouts in a lot of his movies.
Yes. Yes.
I think what I liked about this movie is he cast a lot based on visual, just what you get from looking at them. I think the guy who plays Peter, who's the one who denies him 3 times and has the beard, I loved his performance. It's very brief, but it's all, I mean, his eyes, for me, I mean, Peter is the most talked about disciple, so to speak. He's the one that, and I love what this guy does with it. I love what Mary does with her work. I love Maya Morgenstern, what she does. And little things like that. I actually think the guy who carries the cross with him, the moment that they share Simon of Cyrene and the moment they have is just, I think it's fantastic. So I think there are moments, but I almost think that what Gibson does is he like remembers moments, but I actually think you see him caring less about other things. It's almost like you can see him not caring as much about other things as he cares about this, and this.
I agree with that. And
that's interesting. Okay, so Andy, is there anything else you want to say about the movie itself?
No, let's dive into the next part of it.
Andy?
Yeah.
My Jewish friend, is this movie? No, that's you. That's you. Yeah. You're not my only Jewish friend. Some of my best friends are Jewish. Remember, I haven't told Second Breakfast Nation yet that my brother did a genetic test which says that there's a possibility that I might have some Jewish ancestry. Yes. Anyways,
Jewish members of Second Breakfast Nation, I have already welcomed him to the tribe. Proud to have you, guy.
But you're welcome to. More people can welcome me in. I would love this. There's a very strong possibility that I could be related to Jesus. That's all I'm going to say about that. And Sandy Koufax. Andy the Jew. Is this movie anti-Semitic?
Okay. I want to be very clear because this is going to sound like I'm being glib.
Sure.
I do not mean this in a glib way.
Okay.
I sort of reject that question because I'm not sure it's a movie, and because even if it's trying to be anti-Semitic, which I'm not saying it is, it kind of fails. It's like I just. So there are two groups of people, right? And I think they're pretty well represented by you and me. They're the people who this movie is made for, and the people who it's not.
Right.
And for me to consider it a truly anti-Semitic work, it would have to change one of those groups' minds.
That's a good point.
You know, no. I mean, obviously it could be anti-Semitic in a vacuum, but like
it reminds me.
I worry about.
It reminds me a little bit of Dead Man Walking in that sense. Partially in the sense of, am I going to sit out on a Saturday night and decide to watch Dead Man Walking again? Seriously.
Right. No,
I was thinking about that movie a lot, like the foreboding, like at the end of the movie he dies, and there's that dread that fills you through the movie.
Yep.
But I went and saw that movie in high school. I was pro death penalty at the time.
Yep.
And I was with someone who was anti-death penalty. And we went in and we saw the movie together. We were both extremely moved by the film. Mm-hmm. We both thought it was an amazingly well done film. Mm-hmm. And we both left feeling sort of bolstered in our impressions of capital punishment.
Yes.
Which is fascinating.
It is fascinating.
If you choose to hate Jews and you watch this movie, I guess you can hate Jews more if you wanted.
Yes. Right.
I have here's my thing. I just don't buy it. I get that Mel Gibson has said what he said since. I get that there is moments that he chooses to use that could lead us to that. I think Jesus is a Jew who saves the world. I think Mary, who's played by a Jewish woman, is the two most sympathetic characters are Jews. I think the people who sympathize with him along the way to the road, the road to the cross, are Jews.
Yes.
I think some of the most monstrous people in the movie are Jews, but I think some of the most monstrous people in the movie are Romans. I think there are soldiers in this movie who are just grotesques.
Yes.
Just animals.
Yep.
And so for me, it's just not anti-Semitic. It just isn't. But that being said, if you want to see that, you're probably looking for it, I guess, is what I think.
There are people who are going to find reasons to hate Jews because there are people who are going to find reasons to hate X. Right. And this movie doesn't prevent you from doing that. So if so if that means it's anti-Semitic, yep.
Sure.
Yeah. Right down the line.
I hear you.
I'm really glad you said that. Like not only are these people Jews, like the sympathetic people, they're Jews at the end of the movie too.
Right. They don't there's no point where they're like, and I'm not Jewish anymore.
Right.
Like that doesn't happen.
When I made my first argument that this is not a movie, like I didn't learn anything as a viewer. The viewer doesn't learn anything that he or she didn't already know, and the characters don't learn anything. You don't see anyone be converted.
Here's the moment of conversion. The moment of conversion is meant for the audience in some level, and that moment is that whether it works or not. That moment is the moment at the end of the film. Mm-hmm. Spoiler: after Jesus dies, when Mary is holding Jesus, which is not in scriptures,
right?
And she looks up, and what does she look up at? She looks up at the camera. She stares into the audience.
Oh, that's right.
And the look on her face, to some degree, and you can read it however you want.
Right.
I read it to some degree as like this sort of Godfather, look what you did to my boy. Like, I consider it like
I gotcha.
Her looking at us at like, this is what you have done. Now, for better or for worse, that's how I see it. And who's the person who's looking at us with that sort of look? Well, it's a Jew. It's Mary.
Yeah.
She's Jewish. So to me, it's just, I don't see it. I don't buy it, but I get Mel Gibson certainly hasn't helped this in his own personal life.
Right.
And so there's that. But yeah, okay. I'm not sure I'm ever going to see this movie again. It was very hard for me to watch it this time. It was actually very similar to watching a horror movie, mm-hmm. where you talked about how when you watched Wreck with your friends and every time something scary was about to happen, you'd all start conversations. Right. I was watching this on my computer, and every time, during some of the more particularly intense scenes, I would have it in a window and I'd be working on something else because I just couldn't. I wasn't allowing myself to just fully delve in because for me, whether the movie's great or not isn't the point. Jesus is great, and this is a portrayal of Jesus it's hard for me.
Sure.
I don't feel like watching Jesus get the crap kicked out of him today. It's just not on my list.
I am teaching the SAT for Kaplan right now.
Okay.
And I watched this movie on my computer with my earbuds while my class was taking a practice SAT.
Okay.
And I cannot say which of us had the more taxing and tedious afternoon. That's it in a nutshell. That's it in a nutshell for me.
That's it.
I'm spent.
I'm done. I would love to know what more people think about this movie. Please, we normally tell you to comment. I don't normally mean it. Andy does. But really, I mean it this time. Comment. I'd love to know what people who listen and thought about this. We'd love to get your emails, your thoughts, your comments on Facebook, on YouTube, on whatever, on our page, whatever forum you have to do that. Jump on it. I'd love to hear what people think about this movie because it's worth talking about. It's worth thinking about. I think it's a Rorschach test. I really do. I think it's a human Rorschach test. I think what you think about this movie says a lot more about you than it does about the movie in many cases.
What I'd say to that is, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Ugh.
Well,
I gotta
especially
go.
I think especially for no, because I think I think you're a level-headed dude, and you watch this movie with a level head, and you never have to see it again. Good for you. Like,
I mean this in every way I can mean this. Thank God.
yeah. Ditto. I'm done. I think I'm done with this movie.
Indeed.
And someone much better than me once said, "It is accomplished."
Yes, I like that a lot.
All right.
With
that,
well, stand by because what's next in Project Melway world?
Oh, one of the great joys of Project Melway, Andy, is the film you're about to see, Apocalypto.
I am so excited for this.
I think you will be excited by this.
I was coming up when it came out in theaters. I was coming off of Passion of the Christ, and I was like, Mel Gibson.
Nope,
no.
You lost. Right. Apocalypto, The Edge of Darkness, and then what's the third movie?
The Beaver.
Oh wow!
Another lighthearted romp.
Happy days are here again.
So yeah, so those are the next three. You'll see those in the next 3 weeks. You'll see us talking about those in the next 3 weeks, and that's our story, and that's another edition of Project Melway.
And another episode of Second Breakfast in the can, people.
We're done. You know what? You know what? We put our pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. But the difference is, when our pants are on, we make little podcasts. You know, that's it.
Excellent podcasts.
Yes.
Excellent podcasts.
There we go.
Right.
So, have a great week, everybody. We'll see you sometime on Friday.
Andy.
Phil.
It's been a Jew working with you. I mean a joy.
No.
It's been
No.
I'm sorry for my anti-Semitic
wait. No, you can say that now because you're part of the tribe.
It's true, yes!
It bothers you as a Jew? No, it bothers me as a comedian.
As a comedian. It's a joy working with you. This has been fun. I'm actually really glad we got to talk about this movie together. I really am.
Now that we're past it, me too.
Now that it's over and never brought up again, me too.
Guys, have a great week. We'll see you on Friday. I'm Andy Roth, and that's Phil Duvall. Bye-bye.
Adios.
The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.